Welcome to the shop for what's going to be the fourth part of this series on Stanley iron planes, mostly rabbit planes, although we do have in that grouping a couple of other ones that are not rabbit planes, like the tongue and groove planes. But these are planes that are 100% all iron, and the Philister or Philitzer. But we're going to start now with the 278 rabbit and Philister plane. It's been fairly interesting between me posting these videos and getting ready to do another one. There's always somebody that makes some comment, and it's all been fairly positive. But some of them are a little humorous, and some of them are based on an issue that we have in the terminology of this stuff, and things like rabbit versus rebate, or Philitzer versus Philister. These pronunciations of these words and spelling change between countries. England is predominantly the other country that uses a lot of these tools, and a lot of the Stanley planes were made in England. But England had been making different tools for many years before America started, and some of the older planes and things like that, they make claim to the names of them, and I don't mind them doing that. But sometimes we shouldn't take ourselves so seriously and worry about that. The point is that we're really doing woodworking or collecting tools, restoring them, and playing with them, and working with them. And they are just tools, in fact. Some of them are more beautiful than others, but they are just tools. So let's talk about this 278. Here it is right in front of you. I'm going to go on about it a little bit before I start actually using it for you, because there's some interesting things. This is a Stanley catalog, 1929, and that plane is mentioned here, and it's called the 278 Iron Rabbit and Philister plane in the book. A plane that will lie perfectly flat on either side, fitted with a fence, 2 spurs, and an adjustable depth gauge. The front part of the plane can be detached for bullnose work. The cutter is adjustable endwise, which I think is an interesting term for that. Japanned and nickel trimmings. Endwise, I think they're talking about advancing the iron and taking a deeper cut or lessening it, but not necessarily side to side. So that's 1929. In John Walter's book, he mentions that it's ambidextrous, and that's because you can move the fence from one side to the other. Let me show you some close-ups of it and how it works. So here she is. It's an interesting plane. It's a lot different than any of the other ones that you'll see. This plane is attributed to Christian Bodmer, and you've heard me refer to Bodmer and his patents mostly about these spurs that he designed. The spurs on this one here, as you can see, only has one cutting piece instead of the one that has the 3 on the 78 and those other pieces, you see. So you can either turn it upside down, like I have it, where it's the cutting part is up here and tucked away. Or you can reverse it if you're doing across the grain work and putting this part of the cutter down lower. And as it says in the book, it's actually on both sides. Here's the other one. So on this side, you have the Stanley 278, number 278. Nice thick Japanning on this piece. And like I said, we're going to do this in chronological order. So this is the next one in that group. This one now at 1915 is when this came out. And here, that's the original Bodmer's patent for this plane. And Christian Bodmer has this entire plane attributed to him. And of course, we know that the spurs also was one of his patents. At this point, I had to double check the books versus the patent date on this plane. And it's interesting. The 278 was offered in 1915, but the patents on them were delivered October 17th, towards the end of 1916. Now, I don't know if you remember, but on the 39, I had a plane that's not referenced in the book, and it says patent applied for. So I'm imagining that they sold this plane before the patent came through. They started in 1915 selling it with the patent applied for, and then when they got it, they started stamping the patent date of 1916. That's a guess on my part, but we'll have to go with it. So, looking at the bottom of it, and this is sort of an important part of this plane, if you ever see this plane, and these two wings, the distance from here to here and the distance from here to here, if they're not equal, then that has a fence that has been taken off of a number 78 and moved onto it as a replacement. But the original and correct one for the plane should be equal on each side here. And the reason for that is that, like we said, it's ambidextrous. You can take this fence and switch it over to the other side. But because the cutter is offset, if this had a shorter version, you turned it around, it wouldn't give you this full lead that you need in using this plane. I'm going to take the nose piece off of this for you, and you can see this shape here of this part right in here, and that's where it disconnects. So using a good sized screwdriver, always whenever you're loosening something, make sure that your screwdriver fits the groove in the screw, and you're not doing that and messing up the screw. So we're going to pull this off. That's the bolt that goes in there. Set that aside, and I'm going to take the entire nose off. So there's the nose. Now I'm going to take the fence off because it's in the way of this purpose. So there's the fence gone. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the rod that holds the fence on. Now, with those pieces gone, you see what we have is a bullnose plane where the iron goes all the way out to the front and there's nothing to impede using it. And then you can use this way. You can either use it to say, let's say you had a dowel here and you wanted to shave that off. That would be perfect for that. You'd want to lessen the cut here because right now the cut on it is a little strong. So now you can use it as a chisel plane and just take a little shaving off. If you had a dowel here you wanted to shave off, this would be ideal for that. But basically, it's a chisel that's being held in place by an armature, like the other chisel planes that we talked about. Now, this one here does have this adjuster here for advancing the iron. So if I loosen this a little, you can see by pushing this down or up, it will move that iron back and forth. So let's take out this piece here. And you can see it's got a stamp here. Here's the iron. On the back are these grooves, and the grooves are cut not all the way through. So when you look at the side of it, you see it full thickness there, but these grooves sort of come up and round as they come to the edge, and thereby not weakening this any because this side is completely intact. So that is the iron for this blade, and the bevel on this plane is always kept up. So here's the plane without the iron, without the nose piece. And here's this simple pivoting adjuster with these notches to move that iron back and forth. Now, as mentioned in the thing, these are supposed to be at a right angle And so they have been machined so that you can run this plane on one side or turn it over and run it on the other, and you'll get a square cut. Here's the front piece that we took off. And you can see there's a hole up here, and that means that you can actually reverse and use the fence on the opposite side of the plane, so you can switch them out. And they're perfectly symmetrical, so you have a little thumb piece to hold it here, and you have it on this side as well. Right and left-handed, ambidextrous. Let's put it back together. The machining on this plane is very important, that when you put this front and this other side on, that this goes on nice and square. So good machining is what makes for that nice fit. And you should always check if you ever see one of these and make sure that they feel flat and maybe put a square to them. I had somebody bring me one that was really badly mismatched. They had, I think, used a nose from another one and switched them out, and caused all sorts of problems, and I had to flatten both sides to get it back to where it would function properly. So we've got the bar back in for the fence. I'm going to put the fence on, and we have this raised out of our way, which is fine. We're going to go with the grain, and go ahead and advance it just a little bit. Loosen this, and then just pull up this a hair, tighten that back up. Now what I've done is I've moved the fence a little further back, so I'm getting a cut that's a bigger cut than what I did here with this rabbit. So I'm riding up on the higher part and taking this down. I think you can see this line right here. So if you were going to do a double-stepped rabbit or something, this would work very well for that. You can do one and then continue down with the other one. So there you see you have two different rabbits of different heights, or rebates. Plane works beautifully that way. And of course you have your depth stop, which is really a cute one compared to the 78s that you're used to, those bigger ones. This is just nice. I want to be able to show you this this handle here. The shape of it, you see it fits nicely into your palm, and you can put a hand through here. So basically you're pushing with this part of your hand. Now you could put a thumb there if you needed to. I tend to put my finger in this little space in here, and you can see how I hold it. But it's a very comfortable plane. I think it's a great one for somebody's toolbox because it's so small and it gives you, you know, several different options for cuts that you want. But let's see how I handle it here. This plane has a little opening here, and that's very good for keeping your thumb as you work down the piece that you're cutting. So here you can see that we're developing a rabbit along this edge here, and we can make it wider if we want or deeper if we want. We can control that with the fence and the depth stop. But it's a great little plane that way, and you can see how well it's working. When you take one of these planes and you attempt to cut a rabbit and you're going across the grain, and you don't have a slitter or a spur in there to cut that end grain, this is the kind of tear out that you can get. So I'm turning it now to show you what this will do with the spur in. And it's kind of delicate work here. It's very important that you have a screwdriver that fits the screw really well and properly so that you don't mess it up. But you can see it's kind of difficult tedious, maybe a little, but now I have the spur in there, and just snug it up a little bit, and now the spur will cut ahead of that line. So what I'm going to do is clean this up a little bit, and then we'll do the same thing with the spur. So here I have a fresh board, and I've installed the spur, and we're going to see how that comes across here. And you can see that that spur is cutting in this line of the across the grain. It's making a cut before the iron has done it. So we'll start back here and just start making a cut. This is some really soft wood. I should probably have taken some harder wood, and it wouldn't be so, this would be a lot smoother. But here you can see that there's not a lot of tear out along this line, whereas on the other side, using that plane without it, we had those really furry lines. So here you can see how that low angle helps going across the grain, but it'll also work with the grain. So here we're going to set it so it's not very far in, setting our fence in, so that'll be the inward part, and then we can set the depth gauge to whatever we want. We won't go, we'll set it a little bit shallow and then go from there. So we're really taking off this little strip on the side. If you are done using the plane and you want to stand it up, you see it doesn't want to. It'll sit on its side like that. But the nice thing about this is if you loosen this and you slide this in, tighten her up, with the fence out here, she'll stand on her own. So that's the 278. Now, I thought I'd be able to do the 278 and probably throw in something else, but I'm going to have to use this little bit of time we have left to talk about a couple of planes that are missing in my collection. When you look at these planes and you start going through them trying to figure out the dates of them and everything, like I say, the 278 was 1915 introduced, 1916 when they'd gotten the patent. The next one would have been the 239, which is a special dado plane. It's an interesting plane, and it has different size cutters. Let me read to you what this plane was manufactured for. It didn't have a fence before 1925. Later, a fence was added. The 239 is a special dado plane, and it was used for blind wire grooving up to a ½ inch deep, so you could inset wires, and it was pretty much especially adapted for use by electricians. Offered between 1915 through 1943, 7½ inches long, and a variety of cutters. 1/8 cutter, 5/32, 3/16, 1/4 inch, and a ½ inch cutter. There are that many. And then the 239.5 is basically the same plane, except that it does not have the front double spur cutter on it. So that 239 I don't have to show you, unfortunately, so I have to show you the picture in the book and be satisfied with that. And then when I come back for the next portion of this series, we'll get into a plane which was used for weather stripping, and that is this plane here, which is a 378. We did the 278. This is the 378, and it's interesting. We're not going to get into it now, but it's interesting because it has different depth stops, because it has depth stops on each side, and it has a 2-bar fence, and they have these little pieces on them so that you can save different different distances and lock them in with these special pieces. So we'll get into that in the next one, and hopefully you've gotten enough out of this one to enjoy it. And until the next one, when I do a little more research and writing down things, I hope you guys will take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Bye.